Not long ago, the Middle East airlines barely registered on a global scale. In the 1980s, carriers from Europe and Asia treated cities like Dubai and Bahrain as mere refueling stops on long-haul routes. Back then, most airlines were modest, state-owned carriers, symbols of national pride, but not exactly paragons of luxury and efficiency. So how, in just a few decades, did this region give rise to Emirates, Qatar, Etihad, airlines symbolic with opulence and high, top-notch service? This is the captivating story of how Gulf nations went from humble beginnings to global high flyers, transforming air travel in the process. The question isn't just how they got this fancy, it's how they managed to fundamentally shift the global balance of power in the aviation industry so quickly. Part of the secret sauce starts with location. The hubs of Doha, Dubai, and Abu Dhabi are basically geographic superconnectors. Think of it, they're within an 8-hour flight radius of about 80% of the planet's population. But that's only a fraction of the story. To understand the rise of the Gulf's luxury airlines, we need to understand what came before. In the late 20th century, Middle Eastern air travel was dominated by a handful of traditional flag carriers. Gulf Air was the early heavyweight, a carrier jointly owned by Gulf states in the 1970s, serving as a pan-regional airline. Likewise, airlines like Saudia, commonly known as Saudi Arabian Airlines, Royal Jordanian, Egypt Air, and MEA connected their home countries to the world, but none were game changers in service. These airlines often offered a no-frills service, weighed down by excessive paperwork and not much of a drive to compete for customers in the aviation industry. In fact, many airlines were run more for prestige than profit, with little accountability for the service standards or earnings. Then the game changed. By the late 1980s and early 90s, new technology, notably the Boeing 747-400, allowed airplanes to fly longer distances without stopping. Suddenly, European and Asian carriers no longer needed to touch down in the Gulf to refuel, and they cut back services to the region. For Gulf states, this was a wake-up call. Either build your own airline or get left behind. I think it's incredibly clear what option they chose. Out of this shifting landscape rose three giants that would revolutionize luxury air travel. The story of the big three really starts with a split. Emirates was the first. In 1984, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum instructed someone to start looking at an airline for Dubai. With just 2 leased airplanes and 10 million in seed money, it was a scrappy upstart with big dreams. In its first year, Emirates carried only about 86,000 passengers, a tiny figure. But it grew rapidly through the 1990s by adding routes whenever other airlines pulled out. Crucially, Dubai's rulers insisted that Emirates run as a commercial business instead of a subsidized vanity project. And this set the tone for what was to come. Next came Qatar Airways. My favorite. Founded in 1994, it remained small until 1997 when a visionary new CEO, Akbar Al-Bakr, took charge and relaunched Qatar Airways with an aggressive growth strategy. Under Al-Bakr's leadership, the airline expanded from a handful of planes into a global player. Fun fact, when he started, Qatar Airways had just 4 aircraft. Today, they have over 200. By the 2000s, Qatar Airways was poised perfectly to compete neck and neck with Emirates, not only on reach, but also on quality. And finally, in 2003, Etihad joined the scene. Backed by oil-rich Abu Dhabi, Etihad was created to forge Abu Dhabi's identity in aviation. Though the youngest of the trio, Etihad made its mark by pushing the luxury envelope to the limit, as we'll soon see. Together, these 3 Gulf carriers formed a new elite club, sometimes called the Middle East Big Three. Not very creative. The growth in numbers were astonishing. In 2003, Emirates flew 10 million passengers. A decade later, it flew 39 million. Qatar Airways jumped from 3 million to 18 million in the same span, and Etihad, virtually zero in 2004, carried nearly 12 million passengers by 2013. Now, one of the questions is, why did these countries spend so much money on planes and airports? The answer really is simple. Similar to a lot of the rest of the development in the region, they needed to stop relying so heavily on oil and gas. For Dubai and Qatar, aviation isn't just a business, it's a national insurance policy critical for economic survival and diversification. In Dubai, the aviation sector was projected to account for 32% of its GDP by 2020. This reliance on air traffic forces long-term planning. Even though the Middle East represents only 3.7% of global GDP, its airlines deliver about 10% of worldwide capacity. That's punching way above their weight. But you can't be a global hub without a massive airport, so they built them. Middle Eastern airports have poured immense resources into infrastructure designed for seamless, high-volume transfer traffic. If you've flown through Dubai, you'll know it's busy. It is in fact the second busiest airport in the world, handling over 1 million passengers annually. But what do you know about Dubai's Al Maktoum International? The airport's set to become the world's largest, designed to handle an astounding 260 million passengers a year. That's over 2.5 times more passengers than Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, which is the busiest airport in the world. These are not just terminals. They are high-speed connection machines strategically located between major global markets, Europe, Africa, and Asia Pacific, designed to capture every single bit of transfer traffic. A passenger traveling from, say, Asia to Latin America or Africa finds that connecting in Doha or Dubai is often way more direct and pleasant than detouring through Europe. The Gulf carriers capitalized on this geographic advantage, tapping routes that didn't even make sense via traditional hubs. They've effectively turned Dubai, Doha, and Abu Dhabi into the new Silk Road of aviation. But to run a global transfer strategy, you need massive planes that can cover incredibly long distances. Wide-body jets are the backbone of this operation. The big three placed historic, record-breaking orders for state-of-the-art modern aircraft, giving them huge leverage over manufacturers like Boeing and Airbus. For example, Emirates launched the new Boeing 777X variant with over 150 orders back in 2013. This mega deal wasn't just big, it basically funded the existence of the 777X. That is real power. The sort of power that, not long ago, made Boeing build a successor to the iconic, legendary Boeing 747 jumbo jet just for British Airways not long ago, which then flopped when BA decided not to order any. You can see how airlines can have a stranglehold over the aircraft manufacturers. They influence not just air travel standards, but global aerospace production. Emirates has over 100 Airbus A380s, the most in the world. The next largest is Singapore Airlines with 17. The hubs that these huge planes are based in also never sleep. I have transited through Doha's airport at 2 AM more times than I care to count. In Heathrow, that will never happen, but in the Gulf, there's no curfews on aviation. But growth and geography are only part of the story. The other reason the Middle Eastern airlines have captured the world's attention is pure, unadulterated luxury. These carriers didn't just compete on price or convenience, they went all in on premium experience, creating an aura of flying glamour that had largely disappeared elsewhere. Consider Emirates First Class, often likened to a hotel room in the skies. Emirates offers fully enclosed private suites on many aircraft, complete with sliding doors, personal minibar, vanity desk, and of course a plush lie-flat seat. On their flagship Airbus A380s, first class passengers can even take a shower at 40,000 feet. And afterwards, head to the onboard cocktail lounge for a drink at the bar. These were not gimmicks, but genuine differentiators that made headlines worldwide. It's no wonder Emirates First Class is a fan favorite amongst luxury travelers and consistently ranks amongst the world's best first class products. Not to be outdone, Etihad Airways, based in Abu Dhabi, upped the ante with something straight out of a James Bond fantasy. The Residence launched in 2014 on Etihad's A380s. The Residence is the world's first 3-room suite on a commercial airliner. It boasts a living room with a leather couch, a minibar, a separate double bedroom, and a private ensuite shower. Effectively, a little apartment in the sky. Flying the Residence also comes with a personal butler trained in the Savoy Hotel in London to cater your every whim. They really said, checkmate. And then there's Qatar Airways, who took a completely different approach to make sure that business class is so premium that first class isn't even needed. I've definitely talked enough about Qatar's Q suites on this channel, so next time I talk about it, it has to be from the seat itself. Across all cabins, the Gulf Airlines emphasize service and amenities. Seats tend to be newer and more spacious with multinational cabin crews, giving unmatched hospitality. Even the economy classes on these airlines get praised for being above average legroom, decent meals. In fact, I feel like decent is doing a disservice. Extra baggage allowance, perks that have been slashed by many Western airlines. All the luxury in the world though wouldn't mean much if these airlines weren't safe and reliable, which of course they are. Once again, the Middle Eastern trio excel. They operate young fleets, averaging under 10 years old, much newer than many competitors, and they've built a strong safety record to match their 5-star service. In fact, according to industry rankings, Qatar Airways and Emirates were both jointly ranked as the world's 3rd safest airlines, with Etihad closely behind, ranked as 5th. These rankings take into account factors like incident history, safety procedures, and fleet age, and the Gulf carriers score near the top on almost every single metric. Looking at historical records, Emirates has never had a passenger fatality in its nearly 40-year history. Qatar likewise has also not had a fatal crash since its founding in 1994, and Etihad, though a bit younger, you guessed it, no history of fatality. This level of safety is not easy to maintain given the millions of miles flown, but reflects the rigorous training and maintenance standards that these airlines uphold. It also boosts their reputation amongst travelers. When you step foot on a Qatar or Emirates flight, you have confidence that you are in some of the safest hands in the sky. I promise, this is not sponsored. But if you've made it this far in the video and you like the content, please like and subscribe. That really helps me to make more content like this on this channel. These airlines rake in international awards year after year. These marketing moves reinforce an image of excellence, glamour, and global reach. In short, the Middle East top airlines not only walk the walk, but they talk the talk. And the world has been listening. But before we conclude, it's worth noting that not every airline in the Middle East is a luxury carrier, nor has every country replicated the Gulf Trio's success. The region's aviation story has both winners and losers. For example, Saudi Arabia, despite its immense oil wealth, didn't historically develop an Emirates-style airline known for its luxury or global ambition. Another example mentioned earlier is Middle East Airlines, commonly known as MEA of Lebanon. MEA has a long history, surviving civil wars and economic turmoil in its home country, and it has a decent reputation regionally, but it operates a much smaller fleet and offers a standard of service that is more good enough than ultra luxe. Other national carriers like Royal Jordanian or Kuwait Airways similarly provide reliable air service, but without the deep pockets or sky-high ambitions to compete at the very top of the global rankings. The Middle Eastern aviation landscape also includes low-cost carriers that focus on affordability instead of frills. Pioneers like Air Arabia from Sharjah in the UAE and Fly Dubai, Dubai's budget offshoot, have opened air travel to a broader population. However, the halo effect of the luxury Gulf carriers is undeniable. They set a benchmark that even smaller airlines feel the pressure to inch towards. We've seen Oman Air, for instance, try to brand itself as a boutique premium airline, and Turkish Airlines, which is just outside of the Arab Gulf, successfully build a global network with excellent service, often mentioned in the same breath as the big Gulf Three. In other words, Emirates, Qatar, and Etihad changed the game, and everyone else in the aviation industry had to respond, either by differentiating or trying to elevate their own standards. There is a plot twist in this story. Saudi Arabia, perhaps seeing the success of its neighbors, has decided that it wants a slice of the aviation pie after all. What a surprise. In 2023, the Saudi government announced the creation of a brand new flagship airline called Riyadh Air, with the explicit goal of turning the capital, Riyadh, into a global aviation hub to rival Dubai or Doha. Backed by the kingdom's sovereign wealth fund, Riyadh Air has already placed huge orders for modern jets, including at least 78 Boeing 787 Dreamliners, and even hired ex-Etihad CEO Tony Douglas to lead the company. Their plan? By 2030, launch flights to over 100 destinations and triple Saudi Arabia's total air passengers to 330 million a year. It's an ambitious vision under Saudi's Vision 2030 program, which seeks to diversify the economy and boost tourism to the region. Can Saudi Arabia catch up? Time will tell. The government certainly has deep enough pockets to fund its shiny new airline and colossal airport in Riyadh. Saudi Arabia also has the advantage of a massive domestic market, 35 million passengers traveling internally per year, and millions of pilgrims traveling the country annually, which officials say will give Riyadh Air a solid base of local traffic that Emirates or Qatar always lack. But is the market already too saturated? One thing is for sure though, the bar has been raised massively and I don't see anything changing anytime soon. The food, insane. The onboard experience, superior. Even the loyalty schemes and programs have far better benefits than a lot of Western comparisons. Have you flown with any of the airlines mentioned in this video? What was your experience like? For me personally, I am yet to have a bad one. It will be interesting to see how other airlines respond. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did and you made it to the end, I appreciate you so much. Please do like this video. It helps the channel out a lot. If you want to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button. I'm Jordan. This is Miles Ahead. Thank you for watching. Safe.